Hello, I'm Mariam Mashiri. Iranian state media has confirmed its Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei has been killed in his compound after the US and Israel engaged in large-scale strikes across Iran. State media reported that his daughter, son-in-law and grandchild were also killed.
ملت بزرگ ایران، روح بلند پیشوای ملت بزرگ ایران و پیشقراول امت اسلامی حضرت امام خامنه‌ای.
Well, this was the moment Iranian state television made the announcement just hours after Israel and the United States first claimed to have killed the Supreme Leader. 40 days of public mourning have been announced in Iran. There was no mention of a successor. Shortly after Khamenei's death was announced, Iran threatened yet more retaliation. In the last few hours, sirens have been heard in Tel Aviv as the Israeli army seeks to intercept missiles fired across from Iran. Well, meanwhile, Iran has confirmed it's launched a new wave of strikes across Israel and US bases. This is smoke from a fire in Doha, and explosions have also been heard in Dubai and Bahrain's capital, Manama. US President Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social in the past half an hour. Iran just stated that they are going to hit very hard today, harder than they have ever hit before. They better not do that, however, because if they do, we will hit them with a force that has never been seen before. In the past few hours, we've also been hearing that thousands are mourning Ayatollah Khamenei, and they've been gathering in central Tehran. Let's go live now and speak to our correspondent, David Willis, who is in Washington for us. And David, just talk us through what we've been hearing from President Trump in the last few hours.
Well, Mariam, Donald Trump has said that the death of Iran's supreme leader could make a diplomatic solution to this crisis easier to achieve, but diplomacy seems a long way off at the moment, with protests in the Middle East over those US-Israeli attacks on Iran on Saturday. We've seen, of course, retaliatory strikes by Iran on US military bases in the region, and now has come those incendiary remarks by Donald Trump, in which he threatened to unleash a force that has never been seen before on Iran if it continues its retaliatory strikes on countries in the region. And this followed a similar threat, of course, by Iran's Revolutionary Guard, which responded to the death of the Supreme Leader by saying that a red line, as it put it, had been crossed, and adding that there would be consequences. Now, the Truth Social post a few hours ago from Donald Trump was responding to Iran's threat to hit the United States hard, and Donald Trump warned Iran basically not to go there, adding, because if you do, we will hit them with a force that has never been seen before. Well, that followed Donald Trump's warning in a previous post that heavy bombing of Iran would continue for the next week at least, until, as he put it, peace is restored in the Middle East. In Marion.
David, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's cross live now and speak to our correspondent, John Donnison, who joins us live from Tel Aviv. And John, what are we seeing and hearing in terms of those missiles that we think are being fired towards Israel from Iran?
Well, almost all of those missiles have been shot down by Israel's missile defense system, but some are getting through. We're in the center of Tel Aviv. You can see it's a residential neighborhood. And behind me is where one of those missiles struck last night. It blew out an apartment block where a lot of people were living. Now, quite a few people will have been in the shelter, but one person was killed there, a woman who we understand she was Filipino, a caregiver to someone who was living in that apartment. A lot of people actually out on the streets this morning coming to take a look. I've just seen one woman pointing up to her apartment, badly damaged, in tears. And this morning, it's been pretty lively. There have been several large barrages of missiles. Just as we were driving into Tel Aviv, directly overhead, we saw two interceptors go up, two loud explosions as they took out a missile coming in. I think the question is, given how diminished, how degraded Iran's military capabilities have been over the past year, really, how long can they keep this up? They've said this is going to be the most devastating operation of retaliation in their history, but how capable and how willing are they to continue it?
And John, what's the feeling within Israel in terms of people and what they think about what's happening in this war with Iran coming so soon after the war in Gaza?
Well, look, people, not just in Israel, but across the whole region, are really weary of war in the Middle East. It's what's been going on now for more than 2 years. We've had the war in Gaza, we've had a war between Israel and Lebanon, and now this. But I think there is an acceptance amongst Israelis that some sort of crisis point with Iran was inevitable. And I think many will accept what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, that Iran posed an existential threat to Israel. Now, that doesn't mean that they're fully supportive of their government in everything they do, but I do think that most Israelis will feel that, you know, something had to be done about Iran in their view. But it is having an impact on the economy. All schools are going to be closed this week across Israel. The airport's closed. We came in past Ben Gurion Airport this morning in Tel Aviv. No flights going in or coming out of there. That's going to have an impact too. And as you point out, you know, they're only just really recovering from the end or some sort of end to the war in Gaza, and now this.
John, thank you very much indeed. John Donnison there in Tel Aviv. Well, let's just bring you some lines that are coming into us in the last few minutes. First of all, I want to tell you about Air France. It has announced that it's suspending its flights to Beirut, Dubai and Riyadh today, following the crisis with Iran. Now, remember, there are plenty of airlines who have done the same thing already. Air France joins airlines like, for example, Emirates and Turkish Airlines, who have said they are suspending their flights for now. You can see here a flight tracker. No flights over Iranian territory, understandably, given what's going on. Let's also bring you some more lines coming into us from the capital of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. We're hearing that explosions have been heard in the last few minutes in the east of the Saudi capital, Riyadh. That's according to residents talking to Agence France Presse correspondents. That is the latest from there. And we've also had a few lines coming into us following a statement from the Iranian President Pezeshkian. The Iranian president has said in a statement that Tehran views revenge as its legitimate right and duty and will do its utmost to fulfill this duty. That is what the president says. He also has said that the killing of the Ayatollah Khamenei is a declaration of war against Muslims. He has said these words in a statement in the last few minutes. We will, of course, try and get you a bit more on that because we haven't heard from him properly in that way for a short while. So we'll try and bring you more on what the Iranian president is saying in a few minutes' time. But let's cross live now to Barbara Plett-Usher, who is in Doha. And Barbara, we've been hearing about explosions, renewed explosions in Doha where you are. Now we're hearing about more happening as well in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, that's right. And there's been quite a strong statement as well from the Iranian army chief speaking on state television. He said that Iran's Air Force had pounded U.S. military bases across the Gulf, as well as in Iraq's Kurdistan region. He said that there had been different plans made for different scenarios that might evolve, and this is the plan for what's happened, that the Iranian army, the Iranian military would act with all its might. And we have seen the resumption of airstrikes, as you mentioned this morning. You have the reports of explosions in Saudi Arabia, which have just come out. You've also had a fire breaking out in a port in Dubai, in one of the berths there. In the Zayed International Airport in Abu Dhabi, hit by a drone. Also, Bahrain International Airport hit by a drone. Here, there was a round of very heavy explosions this morning, which was the interceptors, the intercepting missiles coming in. There's a fire, small fire at an industrial area, the Interior Ministry says, which was caused by debris from the drone. So this is very much an ongoing situation, and the Iranians have signaled very strongly that they are going to continue the attacks and try and step them up, given the death, the violent death of the Ayatollah.
And what does this mean for the region, Barbara, in terms of, these attacks on Arab nations, on also countries that perhaps even saw themselves as allies of Iran, or at least those mediating countries like Oman? They have also been attacked. What does this do for regional stability?
Yes, that's right. It's good you mentioned the attack on Oman. Oman had been spared until now. That it has served as a key mediator in negotiations on Iran's nuclear program between the Iranians and the Americans for many years, but also now. And this morning, the state news agency said that its commercial port had been hit by drones. The port also serves as a military logistics hub. So that's part of the Iranian response. Well, I think from a practical point of view, most of these missiles have been intercepted across the Gulf. They've been mostly shot out of the air, but there has been some damage, there have been some injuries, and a few deaths. And most significantly, I think there's been a real disruption to the Gulf, which prides itself on its stable, prosperous economy built on oil exports and tourism and finance and travel. All of that has been disrupted. The Strait of Hormuz, through which oil exports go, is largely inoperable at the moment. Some tankers have gone through, but very, very few. The flights, many of them have been canceled, airports shut. And the Gulf countries, this is a scenario that they had warned the Americans about. And as you said, they were very much at the forefront of trying to mediate a peaceful solution to this. They had been improving relations with Iran in recent years, reducing the tensions. They had been speaking to both Iranian officials and American ones in the past couple of months, trying to organize negotiations that would prevent this outcome. They had also made very clear in public that they would not allow the Americans to use their bases on Gulf soil to target the Iranians. It seems most of the missiles are being fired from the aircraft carriers. So all of these measures taken to try to downsize or prevent this kind of direct military strikes that they're now experiencing. And some of the governments issued very angry statements condemning what's happening as a violation of international law and national sovereignty, saying they reserve the right to respond. What exactly that might look like, I think they will be figuring out over the next couple of days based on how long this lasts, how much damage Iran can inflict. And crucially, there's this uncertainty now, given that the Ayatollah, the Supreme Leader, has been killed. Uncertainty for Iran, but also for the region as to what the changes in that country will mean for stability in the wider area.
Barbara, thank you very much indeed. Some breaking news from Pakistan to bring you, and that is that authorities are saying 9 people have been killed after pro-Iranian protesters clashed with police near the US consulate in the southern city of Karachi. Police fired tear gas to disperse a crowd trying to storm the consular building following news of the death of the Ayatollah Khamenei in US and Israeli military strikes. We can cross live to Lahore and speak to BBC Urdu's Tahab Ashgar. Tahab, thanks for joining us. Just bring us up to date with what more we know about this incident.
So after the death of Ayatollah Khamenei, protests arrested in different cities of Pakistan, especially 2 big cities, Lahore and Karachi. Right now I'm in Lahore, and we are also seeing a huge number of hundreds of people sitting outside of US consulate protesting, and most of the people, they belong to a Shia community. Similarly, 2 hours before in Karachi, protests erupted and they turned into a violent protest. Police used force, used tear gas. Also, the protesters are alleging that they have been using bullet shots. So a lot of people got injured and 9 people died. The force is still there. Police force is there. Security forces are there to stop protesters while they try to enter in the US consulate. Still, the situation is not as under control, whereas the authorities are claiming that protesters are a bit away from the US consulate. So both cities, protests are being observed in Lahore and in Karachi as well.
Tahab, thank you very much indeed. Let's cross live now and speak to our security correspondent, Frank Gardner, who joins us from London. And just let me ask you, first of all, Frank, for your assessment of where we are today after the announcement of the death of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei.
I think we are at an inflection point, and it could potentially get a whole lot hotter, could get a whole lot worse, this, because clearly the Iranians are absolutely livid about this, the Islamic Republic regime, although, of course, many of its citizens, many of Iran's citizens are thrilled about this and have been cheering and celebrating because he represented so much of the oppression that has ended up killing so many of their relatives in the previous couple of months. I think a lot depends on how much weaponry Iran has got left. It has promised a regret-inducing punishment, as it puts it. And there are ways in which Iran could lash out at the US naval force, that is this armada that is offshore. Although that armada has got incredibly powerful weapons and very good defenses, one of the things that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps Navy has been practicing for years is something called swarm attacks. And that's where they try to overcome the defenses of a warship, a single warship, with a lot of drones, torpedoes, missiles, so that the sheer number, the sheer volume overcomes the defenses. Now, if they could sink a US Navy warship, that would be a huge blow, even though the retaliation from President Trump would be huge. And indeed, President Trump has threatened them this morning, today, with, don't even think of hitting back. But they will, for a matter of pride, I think, want to do something about this. Now, there will be definitely some voices, probably in the foreign ministry, who are saying, we need to calm this down. We can't win this. For the Islamic Republic to survive, it needs to calm this down, because I don't think it can win this fight militarily. But Iran is a very resilient it's a very resilient place. It's suffered years of sanctions. They have got allies in the form of Russia and China, but who are staying largely on the sidelines. There is more that they could do to try to choke off the Strait of Hormuz, for example. They haven't, to my knowledge, sown mines yet there, but they've threatened closing that, which would choke off between 20 and 25% of the world's oil supplies and quite a large amount of the world's liquid natural gas supplies. So there are more measures that they could do. And of course, at the same time, they're hitting hotels, residential complexes, airports, and infrastructure in the neighboring Gulf states, in Bahrain, in Qatar, and the UAE. So for somebody like me who's lived in both Dubai and Bahrain, it is extraordinary to see a place that is utterly peaceful normally, getting hit with these explosive drones that we're more used to seeing hitting buildings in Odessa and Kyiv.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, because these Gulf states, these nations that are being hit, and as you mentioned, it's not just US bases or Western bases that are being hit. We're seeing hotels and airports. What are they going to do? What's their next move? How much more are they going to take of this type of attack from Iran before they, as some of them have said already, follow through on their reserving the right to retaliate themselves?
Yeah, I mean, that will be something under consideration. Bahrain's National Security Council, for example, will have been discussing exactly that. I mean, they haven't experienced anything like this before. I lived in Bahrain in the 90s, and I was there during the Gulf War of 1991. There were a few Iraqi Scuds that came over. There was one that hit Dhahran, for example, just across the water in Saudi Arabia. And Riyadh did experience Scud attacks, as well as Tel Aviv, back then in the 90s from Iraq. But there was nothing like what they're having now, with airports being hit with drones. And of course, drones didn't really exist back then. In the 2003 Iraq invasion, the Iraqi army crumbled very quickly. So there was no time for anything like this. Last year, there was in June a retaliatory hit by Iran against the US base at Al Udeid in Qatar, but it was a pretty small attack, and they telegraphed it in advance. They said that they pretty much said, we're going to do a token retaliation for the US attack on Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordow. the nuclear sites. And there was practically no damage or casualties. This is very different. I think Iran has crossed a line here, a red line in the minds of most of the Gulf Arab governments. Oman accepted. Oman has managed to stay friends with both the West and Iran, and they've been wringing their hands in horror at this. The Omani foreign minister has said he is dismayed by this. But I've been reading, I've been getting the emails from public relations departments of Gulf governments like Saudi and UAE and Bahrain. They're really angry at this. They are condemning this. And I think they're going to find it very difficult to have anything like normal relations again with the Islamic Republic if the Islamic Republic survives.
Yes, and that's what my next question actually is going to be to you, Frank, because we've seen what's happened. The Supreme Leader has gone. We all know that the succession process is an opaque one. It's unclear how it will move forward, who will take over. But one thing is clear, there's not going to be the regime change that Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump talked about, with just missiles being fired from Israel and from American warships. We haven't seen any sign of renewed protests in Iran. What's the next move, do you think, for those who want to see an end to this regime?
Well, of course, one of the reasons why there aren't protests is that people are simply taking shelter from the bombs. They're doing exactly what President Trump told them to, which is to sort of shelter in place, essentially. But of course, he did also say, seize the day, carpe diem. This is your moment. This is an absolutely terrifying time for ordinary Iranians because, in January, they faced the bullets and batons of the security forces. Now they're facing the bombs of Israel and the United States, two of the most sophisticated military powers in the world. So, I don't think anybody's going to be coming out on the streets when bombs are raining down from the sky. The big question is, what do the security forces in Iran do? The reason why the regime has been able to stay in place, it's not because it's popular, it's because the security forces, the men with the guns, to put it bluntly, have got a vested interest in that Islamic Republic surviving. They've got economic interests, their salaries are paid, and there's an awful lot of them. The besieged militia number hundreds of thousands. There's a lot of them. The men on motorbikes dressed in black. There is a big, deep security state in Iran. And we have not yet seen in any of the protest movements in 2009, in 2019, in 2022, we've not seen significant numbers or really any of the security forces going over to the side of the protesters or even laying down their weapons and saying, we're not going to shoot our fellow Iranians, because that's what's happened. That's what happened in 1979 in the Islamic Revolution. The Shah ordered his men to shoot at the protesters, and they refused, and then the regime crumbled. That moment has not been reached in Iran.
Frank, thank you very much indeed. Our security correspondent, Frank Gardner.